Bet Kong has no chance.
I'll toss you. Heads for King Kong. Tails.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now days away from, at this point in time, my most anticipated movie release of 2021, Godzilla vs. Kong. It is an understatement saying I'm excited for this movie. I've been a Godzilla nerd literally for as long as I can remember. And as messy as King of the Monsters was, I really appreciated the return of the classic monsters and the introduction to some passive titans that we haven't seen before. I've always liked the new approach on Godzilla's origin, where he wasn't just a creature created from nuclear radiation, but where he was actually an ancient being that's been on the planet for God knows how long at this point, and he was awoken by the nuclear tests back in World War II. I even think it was a nice move making it the almost tragic savior in King of the Monsters, being the reason that Godzilla can come back up for a third time and fight King Ghidorah. Now, there's a pretty sure as shit reason why the Godzilla and Kong are fighting in this movie, but honestly, if the rumors are true, I'm gonna be screaming my ass off in the theater. Without the S. Given how it's been presented in the trailers, I love how not serious this movie seems to be taking itself. It was made out to be like this hype as fuck boxing match, but even as ridiculous as that sounds, I can't be more excited for that. They gave Kong an axe that tanks an atomic breath. I mean, come on. And with how the humans are addressing Godzilla's actions, it seems like we're gonna see Godzilla fuck up a city or two. In the previous movies they've put in the Monsterverse, they've always made Godzilla this worldwide natural power of balance for other monsters, and as hype as that is, I haven't seen the legendary Godzilla cause a city-wide destruction unless he's in a fight, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed that he'll get to revisit the glory days of previous films where he's an unstoppable monster that the humans need Kong for.
Nature has an order. A power to restore balance. I believe he is that power.
And I really want to specify how important this is to me and just how insane that this movie's happening, okay? The original King Kong vs. Godzilla was released back in 1962. We haven't seen these two monsters fight each other in almost 60 years. Back when it was first revealed that Legendary was developing a King Kong remake, I immediately kept my fingers crossed all these years, and thanks to me, we're finally getting Godzilla vs. Kong. And with that being said, what are my hopes for the movie? Well, it's kinda hard to say. See, for me, I was never really satisfied with King Kong as a monster because he was always just an ape that was big and there. I've always really been a King Kong follower, not exactly a fan, just because he hasn't had the same monster presence as Godzilla. I mean, don't get me wrong, just like Godzilla, there's been many different tellings of the King Kong story, but it's always just been the same. Him on the island, fighting monsters, he gets captured, goes to the city, and dies. And with King Kong vs. Godzilla being the first movie I've ever seen him do something other than the same fucking story over and over again, it opened up a new side of King Kong where he had some Japanese films too. I had also grown up watching King Kong Escapes, which in itself is its own wacky fucking movie.
Because it certainly can't get any worse,
Carl, look.
And the 2005 Peter Jackson version was fine, it's just, I wasn't a huge fan of it, not just because it was, again, the same story, but just because the bug part freaked me out like everyone else, but I also got to see dinosaurs in it. But they got pushed off a cliff, and I didn't like that when I was 5. No, no, no.
Godzilla has a brain about this size. He is sheer brute force. While Kong is a thinking animal. His brain is considerably larger. Being instinctive rivals, there is no doubt that they will attempt to destroy one another.
That's why I freaking love Kong Skull Island so much. They made King Kong a lot more interesting. In the new film, they didn't exactly explain how his species came to be, but he's basically another titan in the Monsterverse. Like, they made him part of a species with the whole family, and it's made even more tragic that the Skull Crawlers were the ones to kill all but Kong and the monkey populace.
You saved me. Why?
Also, I love that they didn't just give him another gorilla design, but a more humanoid ape design, and he was pretty fucking smart too. After Kong's parents were killed, he filled the role of the natural protector on the island, even if he wasn't grown yet, and I always found that part of the movie so cool. I love that they emphasized he's not mature, but he's doing what he can, even against all odds. He's actually a really cool hero in his own movie. Skull Island actually has a lot going for it, from everything from when the movie takes place, the cinematography, and the heavy hitters in the fucking cast. I mean, you got Captain Marvel, Loki, James B. Sullivan, Wreck-It Ralph, and they even put Kong in a capture suit and they digitally altered his appearance to be a human. It's insane to me to this day how many big stars they got for this movie. Like back in Godzilla 2014, they had Bryan Cranston, Elizabeth Olsen, and Pietro. Sorry, forgot your name. But it's unfortunate that Bryan Cranston died within the first act of the movie. And while King of the Monster had some star power, the amount of charm Skull Island has just doesn't compare to the other two movies at all. So in a sense where I was raised and bred a Godzilla fan, I'm also kind of rooting for Kong because his presence is just so goddamn interesting. Like in the trailer, he's able to communicate with sign language, which again, I adore because he's smart. He's got big old brain. He's not just a freaking ape, he has intelligence and almost a personality to him that makes him just as entertaining to watch as Godzilla. That being said, I'm still wondering if they'll have any reference to the original 1962 film at all. They've already done a lot of callbacks from the Legacy franchise, like the Mothra twins, the Oxygen Destroyer, Ghidorah being called Monster Zero, fucking Fire Rodan, the MVP himself.
See Rodan destroy a modern city, leveling it to the earth with a killing airstream of his mighty wings.
So with all the callbacks that they've already done, I can't exactly throw out the possibility of the humans getting him drunk at a party and performing a roofie dance ceremony, right? I mean, you already fought a giant squid, so I don't know how silly this movie might get. Now, here's where I'm a little scared for the film. Godzilla 2014 didn't exactly have a comedic tone at all, and I think that somewhere, somehow, an idea got planted in the producer's head that this was a bad thing. I think they just wanted a movie to really perform at the box office, so if they went for a more comedic tone like in Marvel movies, then maybe it would just be more appealing, but they're not really good at it. Like Kong Skull Island suffers from moments of just kind of awkward, not hitting well jokes, but it's honestly just kept to a few characters and it's not taking up all of the movie. Like outside of the end credit screen, Skull Island does a really good job of keeping its characters in line.
Monsters exist.
No shit. I mean, doesn't he miss his bed? I miss my bed. Don't you miss your bed? Do you even have a bed, Cole? You got a bed, right?
Like, what is that? Why?
Dear Billy, this place is hell.
Shut the fuck up. Point is, Kong Skull Island wasn't all that bad with this problem, but it was riddled in King of the Monsters. Like, I understand that there's now just a formulaic approach to writing your action movies nowadays, but I just really hate how it's affecting my Godzilla movies. Like, you look at Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla King of the Monsters, and those are two very different tones of movies. And yes, I understand that movies altogether change as the decades go on, but I really hate that just studios try and cram banter in the films regardless on what story it's trying to tell.
Show me his territorial routes.
What? Why?
Because I want to start a boat tour. Just show me.
Coming up.
Like, even though this type of writing is scattered all throughout every Marvel project, it's not exactly a problem for Marvel because that's just what they're good at. They're good at making well-appropriate jokes. Even after multiple viewings, you'll still find the same jokes fucking funny every time.
That's trespassing in this city and on this planet. It means get lost, Squidward.
Like, I'm not saying that every joke Marvel tells is pure gold, but I'm just saying that there's honestly a time and a place of when to be funny, and Marvel just has a handle on using it at the best time.
Guy got up and he said, "Can you illustrate the difference between a joke and wit?" And Mel Brooks took a glass of water and poured it over his head. And he said, "That's a joke." And there was a long pause and the guy said, so what's wit? And Larry Elbart said, "Wit is dry."
Are you recording this, Stan? I record everything, man. Everything.
Like, you have a scene where Millie Bobby Brown witnesses a murder of probably a good few dozen people, and then in the next scene she's in, she does this. Like, it's just so out of place and unnecessary. Unless the jokes can stay within the writings of the rest of the film, when you hear a bad joke in the movie where the joke shouldn't have been there at all, it seriously pulls you out and you'll find yourself saying, holy shit, I'm watching a bad fucking movie. So honestly, my biggest hopes for this movie is just to tone down the comedy. Like, in all honesty, the monster portions of these films have just been the most enjoyable segments of the movie. Like, they'll be there and try and do something, but at the end of the day, regardless in how interesting or creative you can be with the human aspect, it's always going to be more appealing to watch the monster portion than the human portion. That's always been the case until Shin Godzilla came out back in 2016. The best way to sum up this movie is that Godzilla shows up, the humans have to deal with him, and at the end of the movie, they quote-unquote defeat him. A very typical formula for the Godzilla movie, but this took a very different approach to how we see Godzilla. In this movie, he's actually a radioactive freak of nature, pretty much being an unnatural disaster. Like, for the first time in my life, I watched a Godzilla movie actually being scared of Godzilla. This new take on it really leaves a mark on your heart after you watch it for the first time. He just progressively gets worse as the humans stand by and do nothing, or just arguing and bickering on how to handle the situation instead of just coming together and trying to help the people of their country who need help and are being killed by something, while in their situation isn't easily stopped, but at the very least to come to a decision that can actually help their people instead of just worrying about the best case of action. Like, even though it's a Godzilla movie and it's just entertaining to see him roam around the city in like a new way that we haven't seen before, some of the scenes are actually really sad and just horrific to watch, if I'm being honest.
Han, hurry!
That scene still leaves me very uneasy to this day. What honestly even just knocks this out the park for me for the most accurate natural disaster probably situation that I've seen in a Godzilla movie is that after Godzilla leaves, watch how the rest of the country reacts after that one district faced all that damage. This is what happens the next day.
All flights out of Narita have been canceled. We have several reports of fires blazing out of control in Shinagawa. Verified that most train lines are still running.
Meanwhile, pledges of support continue to pour in from heads of state.
And more supplies and aid workers are said to be on their way here now.
Tokyo Stock Exchange will be open as usual today.
Like, the theme of politics just taking up too much time in discussion without actually taking action runs very true to today, especially with what the fuck is going on in the world. And even though it was a short sequence in the movie, just seeing how quickly their society just kind of bounced back from a disaster like that kind of hit very true to this day, especially for those not affected by the tragedy. Honestly, I cannot recommend this movie enough. It is super compelling and it has one of the best incarnations of Godzilla. It reminds us that Godzilla wasn't always just an action monster to go in the movies and see, but is also just a creature of pure destruction. My hopes for this movie is that even though I've thoroughly enjoyed the monster portions of this story, one of my favorite moments from all the movies so far has been Rodan's introduction, probably taking my personal favorite spot, but I just really hope that they've learned to just attempt to keep the human portion down to a minimum, or at the very least, attempt to tone down the need to give every character in the scene a funny thing to say. Like, I wish a lot of the characters were a lot more passive in these scenes rather than just be a fucking comedian every time that they want to say something.
That bitch.
I will say that in King of the Monsters, you had Michael Dougherty and Zach Shields who made this, which explains a lot. Now for Godzilla vs. Kong, we got Max Bornstein, who's written for Godzilla and Skull Island, but we also got Eric Pearson, who's... oh my god. Oh, fuck.